Last time we have learned to the page the PPT of page 16 for speculation on the floating exchange rate is likely to be destabilized. The main argument advanced against the floating exchange rate is that they are likely to be characterized by destabilizing private speculation, produce the wrong exchange rate, by which is meant a suboptimal rate from viewpoint of a resource allocation. One example of irrational speculation frequently cited is that foreign exchange market participants can be too risk-averse. Or let's go on. Another case where irrational private speculation can produce the wrong rate is why the bandwagon effect. The excessive risk aversion and the bandwagon effect arguments presuppose that foreign exchange speculators do not use all the information and news available to them efficiently, and consequently speculation produces the wrong exchange rate until eventually fundamentals reassert themselves. Note, risk aversion refers to that person who dislikes risk. Let's going to study section 3, the case of floating exchange rate. In Chinese, we can say 第三节浮动汇率的实例。Let's go on. 1. Floating exchange rate ensure balance of payments equilibrium. The proponents of floating exchange rate argue that in a floating regime, the exchange rate automatically adjusts to ensure continuous equilibrium between the demand for and the supply of the currency. This page of PPT tells us that floating exchange rate can ensure the equilibrium of international payments. The floating exchange rate can continuously adjust the demand and the supply of the currency. So when the payment is not is unequilibrium, the exchange rate can adjust up and down. Finally, makes the demand and supply of currency at the equilibrium point. If a country is running an unsustainable current account deficit, its exchange rate will depreciate, which will reduce imports and increase exports until the balance of payments is restored to a sustainable level. This page tells us that if a country has an unsustainable current account deficit, the situation will make the exchange rate depreciate. Depreciate means domestic currency's value will decrease, which will reduce imports and increase exports. Finally, the balance of payments will get to the equilibrium sustainable level. Let's go on. Floating exchange rate ensure monetary autonomy. One of the main arguments put forward in favor of floating exchange rate is that they enable each country to operate an independent monetary policy. That is, there is no monetary autonomy, enabling each country to determine its own inflation rate. This paragraph tells us that floating exchange rate enable each country to operate an independent monetary policy. Because there is no monetary autonomy enable each country to determine its own inflation rate. This page tells us that floating exchange rate can make the monetary one country's monetary policy independent. And one country can ensure its own inflation rate. Let's go on. See the three floating exchange rate insulate economies. A further argument put forward in favor of floating exchange rates is that they can insulate the domestic economy from foreign price shocks. If there is an increase in foreign prices on the floating exchange rate, provided the exchange rate mostly roughly in line with PPP, the domestic currency would merely appreciate, so preventing the country importing foreign inflation. This page gives us the conclusion that floating exchange rate can insulate the price shocks from foreign country to one's country. In another word, we can say, if a country chooses a floating exchange rate, when the other foreign countries has inflation, that will not influence these countries' price level. So the floating exchange rate can insulate the other economy to shock West countries. Let's see the note. PPP means purchasing power parity. PPP means purchasing power parity. Let's go up. 4. Floating exchange rate promote economic stability. A forceful argument put forward by Milton Friedman, 1953, in favor of flexible exchange rate is that it is better to let exchange rate adjust in response to shocks to an economy than fix them and force the adjustment onto other economic variables. This page of PPT tells us that economist Milton Friedman gave us a proposal that a flexible exchange rate is better in response to shocks to an economy than fixed exchange rate. Let's see the note. Economist Milton Friedman, July 31, 1912. November 16, 2006. Famous American economist. Go on the detailed explanation. Index 1. Milton Friedman, 1912.美国著名经济学家，芝加哥大学教授，芝加哥经济学派领军人，货币学派的代表人。1976年诺贝尔经济学奖得主，1951年约翰贝茨克拉克奖得主。弗里德曼被广泛的誉为20世纪最具影响力的经济学家及学者之一。弗里德曼以研究宏观经济学、微观经济学、经济史、统计学，主张自由放任资本主义为名。1976年获诺贝尔经济学奖，以表扬他在消费分析、货币供应理论及历史和稳定政策复杂性的范畴的贡献。弗里德曼是另一位芝加哥经济学派成员，法律经济学奠基人亚伦·艾利科特的妹夫。弗里德曼的 代表作《资本主义与自由》（Capitalism and Freedom） 于1962年由芝加哥大学出版社首次出版。之后又被翻译成18种语言出版。他在书中提倡政府的角色最小化，以让自由市场运作，以此维持政治和社会自由。他的政治哲学强调自由市场经济的优点，并反对政府的干预。他的理论成了自由主义的主要经济根据之一，并且对1980年代开始美国的里根及许多其他国家的经济政策都有极大的影响。Let's go back to the note, Milton Friedman. This paragraph gives us an explanation from Milton Friedman. Let's go on. 5. Private speculation is stabilization. Stabilizing. Private speculation is stabilizing. The advances of floating exchange rate argue that private speculators are a stabilizing rather than destabilizing force. It is in the interest of speculators to move the exchange rate to its fundamental economic value. Speculators will attempt to buy the currency at a low value and sell it at a high value, and in so doing, they reduce the gap between the low and high values. This part of PPT give us an explanation that private speculators can stabilize the economic value. In another word, we can say speculators can make the currency value at a stabilizing level, because speculators can buy the currency at a low value and sell it at a high value. And when they do this, will reduce the gap between the low and high values. So the speculators can make the currency market stabilizing. Let's go on. See. Section 4. Manage the floating exchange rate. In Chinese, we can say 第4节管理的浮动汇率。1. The bug of managed floating exchange rate. Bug of managed floating exchange rate. Managed floating exchange rate means the floating exchange rate managed by the manager. let's see the details explanation. The arguments for some degrees of discretionary intervention overlap to some extent, but fall into three main categories. The authorities can choose an exchange rate more in line with economic fundamentals than the market. Intervention is required to mitigate the cost of exchange rate overshooting. Intervention is an appropriate instrument for smoothing necessary economic adjustments. In order to understand these paragraphs, we should let's see the note. Bug means a defect, flaw, or shortcoming. Bug's meaning is defect, flaw, or shortcoming means bug. Overshooting refer to that exchange rate adjustment is too fast. So this page of PPT tell us that managed floating exchange rate has many bugs. Many in three categories. Let's go on. Authorities might be able to produce a more appropriate exchange rate. The point is that the authorities should be more capable than the market in predicting the future course of their policies. And this is of relevance to the track exchange rate. Given this, intervention in the foreign exchange market may be interpreted by the market and commitment by the authorities to adopt a given course of action. If this is the case, economic agents may more readily lend their support to the new policy, helping to make it more effective and more speedily, so than would otherwise be the case. This page of PPT tells us that authorities not be able to produce a more appropriate exchange rate. Means that authorities can, according to the current market situation, make the policy to adjustment the exchange rate from a level to another level, so that the authorities regard the level is appropriate exchange rate. Let's go on. 3. Intervention need to mitigate cost of exchange rate overshooting. Misaligned exchange rate distort allocation of resources between tradable and non-tradables, as well as consumption patterns between the two. Misalignments of exchange rate almost certainly exert a ratchet effect on protectionism. A ratchet effect in Chinese, we can say 棘轮效应. Ratchet effect, 棘轮效应. This page of PPT tells us that intervention needed to mitigate cost of exchange rate overshooting means if misaligned exchange rate, because misaligned exchange rate will distort allocation of resources and consumers consumption patterns. So the government should adjust floating exchange rate in order to adjust the allocation of resources between tradables and non-tradables, and consumers consumption patterns, so that the exchange rate level will get a correct allocation of resources and the consumers consumption. If the government do not do that, misalignments of exchange rate will produce a ratchet effect. Ratchet effect. In periods of undervaluation of the currency, resources that would ordinarily not be viable into the tradable sector, but as the rate corrects itself, they will come under the increasing pressure and will then seek recourse to protection. This paired PPT tells us that if the exchange rate is not suitable, this will influence resources come into the tradables sector. And the rate tracks itself, they will come on the increasing pressure. Let's go on. 4. Intervention to smooth the economic adjustment process. There may exist a reasonable for the authorities to intervene in the foreign exchange market to achieve a preferable exchange rate. In the short run, to permit a smoothing of the necessary adjustment, that the economy must for a various reason undergo. Exchange market intervention can compare favorably to other methods of protection for the purpose of slowing down the necessary adjustment, such as tariff protection. This page gives us a conclusion that the floating exchange rate should have intervention to smooth economic adjustment process. Another rationale for intervention may exist if the economy is caught in a vicious circle. It should be noted, however, that the real issue behind the vicious circle argument for intervention concerns the effectiveness of different policy instruments in bringing about ultimate reduction in real wages that is essential for adjustment, while minimizing the harmful consequence for other macro objectives, such as maintenance of full employment and reasonable price stability. This page tells us that when economy fall into vicious circle, so the authorities should make intervention to the currency market in order to adjustment foreign exchange rate level, so that make a country's economy go out from the vicious circle, make a country's get a full employment and create and right allocation of resources, and make consumer get a good habit to consumption. Let's have a short break. Let's go back to our classroom. Let's go back to our lesson. Let's see section 5, conclusion. In Chinese, we can say 第5节结论. The clear result that emerges from this chapter is that neither traditional advantage, disadvantage approach or modern literature provide a clear-cut reason to prefer fixed to floating exchange rate, or vice versa. This page gives us a conclusion that from this chapter, we can see the advantage, disadvantage to fixed or floating exchange rate. And under the floating exchange rate, the government or the authority can provide manage the floating exchange rate. The modern approach to evaluating the two regimes shows that only under the very specific conditions can we say that one is better than the other. The lack of decisive arguments in favor of either fixed or floating exchange rate has frequently between taking and the rationale for some degrees of exchange rate management between the two regions. And from this page, PPT tells us that the fixed exchange rate and the floating exchange rate also has advantage and disadvantage in the country's economy. If a country want take advantage of the fixed exchange rate or floating exchange rate, they can use the adjustment approach to repair the exchange rate in order to exchange rate can service for the country's economy. Finally, It should not be forgotten that we have examined the choices between alternative regimes within the context of a specific model specification of a small open economy. It should be forgotten that we have examined by the choice between the alternative regime within the context of a specific model specification of a small open economy. This page tells us that the rationale we have get from this chapter can have examined the choice between alternative regime within the context of specific model specification of a small open economy. This theory can be examined in a small open economy. From the section 5, we have get the all conclusions. Tell us that when we have studied these theories about the fixed exchange rate and floating exchange rate or managed exchange rate, they all have advantages and disadvantages to adjust one country's economy. If we want to use the floating exchange rate or fixed exchange rate to make one country's get full employment or get a good use of allocation of resources or enforce fiscal policy or monetary policy, we must understand the relations between exchange rate and the policies in order to use the fixed exchange rate or floating exchange rate very well. We must understand floating exchange rate or fixed exchange rate action on fulfilling the whole country's economy. So if we understand these actions of fixed exchange rate or floating exchange rate very well, we can use these fiscal policies and monetary policies to adjust the situation of one's country's economy. So from the conclusion, we can get so many solutions to repair West country's economy. Okay, that's all for today's new lesson.